Welcome everybody to a special episode of the SPS DAOn Hall. This evening I will be joined by Yaba P. Med and Cryptomancer is here. So how you guys doing tonight? Well, I guess today for Med.
Yeah.
Howdy, howdy. I'm doing good. Apologies first off if my voice sounds a bit stuffy though. Hay fever season is just kicking off here in Japan and it's hitting me pretty hard today.
Yeah, no problem. Hope you're doing all right, Cryptomancer. Yeah, I'm doing okay too.
Okay, that's good to hear. So I know we basically got a new proposal. I think a couple days ago now to basically look into the DAO hiring Cryptomancer to develop the land expansion. You guys want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I'd like to cover. I'm going to talk a bit about myself, my technical background, what I do for Splinterlands, and what my work schedule is like, and what the DAO can expect from me if this proposal passes. And then, of course, everyone is interested to know what the current status of land is. But before I dive into all those things, I want to let Matt have a chance to open it up. So I'm going to turn over the floor to him first. Are you trying to talk, Matt? I don't hear anything.
Yeah. Maybe we caught him by surprise. um, yeah. Okay. So we got just I guess got dead air right now. um,
Matt, you there?
might be having like an audio issue or something going on.
Yeah, let's give him a minute. Maybe technical difficulties. He's chatting to me, saying that he can't hear anything anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, do you want to go ahead and just give a little bit of your background? Maybe he'll have to like disconnect and reconnect or something, or restart
All
Discord.
right, sure. I'll go ahead and get started then, and we can come back to Matt once he's got things worked out. So, just to tell you a bit about myself, for those of you that don't know me that well, I am American. Um, I'm from Seattle in the Pacific Northwest region of Washington State. And I graduated from the University of Washington in 2003 with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and a minor in Math. And after university, I was trying to figure out what to do with myself. And Japanese culture is very popular in Seattle. So I figured, hey, I want to travel and see the world. I'll go to Japan for a little bit and see what it's like. So I got a job over there teaching English. And originally, I was just going to stay for 1 year, teach English, then come back to the US and resume a computer career. But while I was over here, I met my wife, got married. One thing led to another, had a daughter, and just sort of ended up staying in Tokyo. And I'm still here, like I'm 20 years later, and still loving it. But after a while, I realized that English teaching wasn't really going to work out long term, and I wanted to get back into computer work. So Tokyo is a great place for computer work because there's lots of big global companies here. So I ended up having a very successful career in the finance industry for the next decade and a half or so. And I worked as a contractor doing projects for several big global investment banks, notably Barclays, a British bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and Goldman Sachs. And for all those banks, I worked on their internal trading systems for fixed income products like swaps and bonds, currencies, and commodities. So I'd be the guy that would help code the internal systems that the bank's traders use to buy and sell those types of products. That meant I was also the guy the traders would come and yell at when something didn't work. So it was a bit stressful, but it was also a lot of fun. I got to be kind of in the thick of a lot of action. Um, Traders would come and give us feature requests, and then I'd figure out how to make the software do what they wanted it to do. So that was all well and fine. But in 2015 or so, I started learning about cryptocurrency, and I bought my first Bitcoin then, and I kind of fell down the crypto rabbit hole, and it just completely opened my eyes to things. It was such a radically different way of looking at finance and thinking about how value flows back and forth, and it just got me really super excited. And I started learning about different crypto platforms and blockchains, and eventually I found Steam. And I started blogging on the Steam blockchain in the summer of 2016. My very first intro blog post, I found it the other day. I was looking back and reading it, and it was kind of entertaining to look back and see what I was doing in those days. So if you guys are interested, here is a link to my very first blog post from way back in 2016. And gosh, and looking back, I've come a very long way since those days. Anyway, working on Steam, I got involved in several of the early Steam projects, which were marketed under a brand called Build Team. And that was a startup that I helped found along with a couple business partners in New Zealand and Germany. Some of you veterans that have been around since those days may have heard of things like a Steam Voter, Minnow Booster, D-Lease. Those are all Build Team initiatives, which I helped launch. And that went fine for a while, but it did become apparent after a couple of years that Build Team just wasn't going to work out for various reasons, and I needed to find some other projects to work on. And during those early days with Build Team, I made a lot of contacts within the Steam community, and one of those contacts was this guy named Agrode. And he was working on this thing called Hive Engine, which of course you've all heard of. And so Agrode was looking to find someone to develop the NFT protocol for Hive Engine, and he kindly contracted me to do the work. So I spent a couple months in the later half of 2019, this was, developing the NFT smart contract for Hive Engine. And Agrode ended up being impressed, and he decided to keep me on as one of the main Hive Engine developers. Now, at the same time, I was also a Splinterlands player. I had found Splinterlands in the summer of 2018. That's when I first joined as a player. And wow, things were different back in those days. Things were a lot simpler. Back then, the alpha set was all the rage. Ranked battles were just getting started, and we didn't even have tournaments yet. And I immediately got hooked on the game after I got a GFL in my very first batch of 100 alpha packs. I was like, holy crap, this is awesome. And I wanted to get more involved. Um, about the time I was finishing up the NFT contract for Hive Engine, I saw a player in Discord. I spent a lot of time lurking in the Splinterlands Discord those days, just like I do now, in fact. And I saw this guy. I don't remember who it was, but he said something to the effect of, "Man, the game is going so slow. I wish development was faster, and I wish we could clone you back, Matt." And at the time, Matt did a lot of the coding on the game himself. And I saw that comment and I thought, this might be really fun to work on. So I said to Agrode, "Hey Agrode, Splinterlands is awesome. I really like it. Do you think I can join the team and help code it?" And so he was already familiar with me from the Hive Engine work. So he talked to Matt about it. One thing led to another. And well, you guys know what happened. So I officially joined the Splinterlands team in January 2020. And that means I've been with the team for almost 5 whole years now. And it's basically the passion of my life. I mean, no other job I've ever done, the work for all the big banks, everything that came before Splinterlands, all of it kind of paled in comparison to the passion that I feel for Splinterlands and just the excitement of working on it. it feels like it's what I've meant to do in my life. And I've seen the company go through some amazing changes in all the years that I've been here, um, evolving back from the early days when back then it was just myself, Matt, and one or two other guys doing all the dev work, and there were none of the formal processes and systems that we have now. There was no formal QA. It was just me testing it myself, and there was no formal release window. And I basically finished working on a project, and I'd say, "Hey Matt, it's done. I've tested it. It works. Let's release it." And he'd be like, "Okay, I'll push it out when I can get around to it." And that's the way things went for a long time until we started really building out the team and experienced that large growth spurt once SPS came along. And in my time in the Splinterlands, the kind of work that I do, I'm what you might call a big feature guy. So I derive a lot of pleasure in working on the larger, big things that have a really high impact on the game. And over the past 5-ish years or so, I've been responsible for building out some of the game's biggest features, such as collection power. That was my baby. And boy, we went through maybe 3 or 4 iterations of collection power before we got it right. That was a big project. And then I also built the anytime tournament system starting from scratch, and then followed on to use that as the basis for the Brawl system, which I also built from scratch. And then I went on to become the main lead dev for the Chaos Legion set. I believe in those days Matt was still doing a lot of the card stats himself, but I coded a lot of the abilities for the Chaos Legion cards and did all the sales phases. And there were some late nights on that one, let me tell you. I remember it was like a few days before the Chaos Legion sale was supposed to launch, and it was like 2 a.m., and I was finishing up some things and frantically trying to put on the last little touches here and there, and Nate messages me out of the blue, and he says, "Hey, Cryptomancer, we really want to add this cool story page for the pre-sale, and we want to have these videos on it and this parallax scrolling stuff." And I was like, "Oh my God, Nate, you're just telling me this now, like a few days before we launch." And he's like, "Oh, I thought you could just slip it in there." And here I am at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'm saying, "Sure, Nate, let me see what I can do." And we managed to get it in. I managed to fit it in just in time. And it was just such a satisfying, proud feeling when Chaos Legion launched, and it all just worked. Um, that was probably one of my proudest achievements for Splinterlands, having a smooth launch of a big major set like that, with a lot riding on it for Splinterlands as a company. And so after Chaos Legion, there were lots of other things that I was also involved with. I built out the whole Modern and Wild formats. I developed the guild power system. Most recently, I did the back end for Conflicts, with Antioche doing the front end. Conflicts was a really fun project. Antioche and I really clicked and worked well together. So it was a great opportunity in building that out with him. And of course, now these days, I've been put on the Land project. And Land, I want to talk a bit about in some detail, but before we get into Land, uh, I want to tell you guys basically what the DAO can expect from me if this proposal passes, in the interest of transparency and what my work schedule is like. So I fully intend to remain with Splinterlands for years to come. I'm definitely not going anywhere, regardless of whether or not this proposal passes. Um, and I'm basically an independent contractor, kind of like Claiborne, I think. Being an independent contractor means that I don't get certain perks like paid leave, like actual company employees do. But being an independent contractor means I get other flexibilities. Like I basically set my own schedule as long as the work gets done. And that would continue if the DAO is covering my paycheck. Um, and that also means that if I take time off, the DAO doesn't get billed for it. the DAO would only get billed for time that I actually spend working on Splinterlands. I typically work an 8 or 9 hour day, 5 days a week, and I'm based in Tokyo, so that's during Japanese business hours, of course. Tokyo is UTC +9. I believe that's 13 hours ahead of US Eastern Time. So evening for me is early morning in the US. Right now it's just after 10 p.m. for me. And vice versa. When it's evening in the US, it'll be morning for me and I'll just be getting my day started. So I usually work on Saturdays and Sundays, so this is a work day for me. My days off are typically Wednesday and Thursday, though sometimes I do vary these days depending on personal family needs. And I mentioned that I got my start working for Hive Engine and then transitioned into Splinterlands. I still do work on Hive Engine part-time, mainly because someone needs to keep the lights on over there, and I'm one of the guys that Aggro depends on to do that. So I usually spend about 1 day per week, so roughly 20% of my time working on Hive Engine. And of course, that will not be billed to the DAO. The DAO would only be billing me for, I would only be billing the DAO for Splinterlands work. I'll also be making my timesheet public if the proposal passes. I do have an hourly timesheet where I keep track of all my tasks, and I've been maintaining that timesheet on a daily basis since 2020. So when I make that public, you guys will see everything stretching back for this particular business year, 2024. And you'll be able to see on a day-by-day basis exactly what I'm doing. Hive Engine time, since it will not be billed to the DAO, will not appear on my timesheet. I also travel fairly frequently, every few months or so, because I have some real-life land investments in Malaysia that periodically need looking after. That's kind of a big hobby of my wife. She likes picking out land and doing real estate stuff, and whereas I like collecting virtual land through Splinterlands. So we kind of shuttle back and forth between Japan and Malaysia pretty frequently. While I'm in Japan, I work a full-time schedule, and then while I'm in Malaysia, I tend to work a half-time schedule. And as far as other time off throughout the year, Christmas and New Year's is a very important time of the year for me. So I will be taking some time off for Christmas vacation. And of course, as I mentioned, that does not count as paid leave. I don't get paid leave. So the DAO will only be billed for hours that I actually work. So I think that covers kind of the nuts and bolts of things. The last thing that I want to talk about before handing it over to you about Matt is land. I know that's a big question on everyone's mind. What I've been doing for it? What's the current status? What's coming down the pipeline? So, talking about land, it started off with Farpatrad as the main guy, and then of course he left the team, and I took over as the main land dev once Farpatrad left. And I've always wanted to be involved with land myself. I told you guys I'm a big feature guy, and land is perhaps the biggest feature of them all, so it's right up my alley. It's very different from the rest of the Splinterlands code base due to some design decisions that were made right at the beginning of the project before I got involved with it. So that makes it kind of interesting to work with and very different from the rest of the game. It's also a huge chunk of code, bigger by far than pretty much anything else I've worked on previously for Splinterlands. So it's also different from my other projects in the sense that all those other things that I worked on, I got to start from scratch and build the entire project myself. Whereas land already has a bunch of code that's been written. So rather than starting from scratch, I'm taking it over from someone else and having to run with it. And that means that before I can really be super productive with land, I've had to spend a lot of time getting familiar with how the code base works. And like I said, it's an immense chunk of code, easily the most complex project I've ever worked on. It makes building the Anytime tournament system look like a walk in the park by comparison. So to ease my way into it, I started with a couple relatively easy land projects. Just as we were starting to get into summer, I finished the prefix title feature and got that launched. That was already in a half-completed state from FARPATRAD, so I just took that and finished it off. And then as a follow-up, I added the ability to use delegated and rented cards as land workers. So those were kind of my warm-ups, just to get me used to the code base and get familiar with the land way of doing things. And with those warm-up projects out of the way, I then started focusing on what we're calling Land 1.75. Now, that still involved a lot of additional warm-up. So I spent the summer months doing kind of a systematic analysis of all the land code, focusing on the database portions, which are the most complicated piece. So I had to look through every single one of dozens of different database tables, views, database views, and database functions. Just a whole bunch of very technical database-related stuff that's at the heart of the whole land system. And I had to ask myself the question for each one of those things. I had to ask, will the work for land 1.75 affect this piece? And if the answer was yes, then I added it to this big list I started compiling, along with a bunch of notes and stuff about it. And then I moved on to the next piece. So at the end of summer, when I finished that analysis, the end result of all that was this giant list of everything that might be affected by what we need to do for land. And so with that in hand, and with the land 1.75 plan firmed up, I started moving ahead with the implementation phase, which is where we're at right now. And I want to show you guys the exact status of land. So I have a little screenshot here that I've prepared. I'm going to dump this into the chat. So here we go. One moment. All right, so zoom in on that there and take a look, and I'm going to explain this to you. So land 1.75, that's what the next phase is before we get to land 2.0. This is what we're calling the wood, stone, and iron release. Now, the land 2.0 white paper is huge. And there's a lot of stuff we need to do to make that happen. So, yeah. thanks, B Jingles. We're gonna get to all your questions and all that. Don't worry. I'll try to speed this along. We'll have plenty of time for all of that. I just thought the biographical bit was important first for people that don't necessarily know me too well. So, land 1.75 is going to include wood, stone, and iron. That's the core of it. And you can see on the right, I have kind of a feature summary of what's going to be involved. So we're still going to have research and SPS work sites, but in order to produce research and SPS, you're going to need to produce wood, stone, and iron, and then feed that in as raw materials to produce your SPS and research. And also, the grain work sites are not going to be available on all plots any longer. So you can see there's a list there on the right that shows which types of land are going to support grain. This also means that we'll need some transition process for grain work sites to be turned into some other type of work site if they're not on the right terrain type. Like, for example, say land 1.75 launches and you have a grain work site that's sitting on a swamp. Well, you're not allowed to have grain work sites on a swamp. So initially, it'll stay a grain work site, but as soon as you go to harvest grain from that work site, it will automatically transform itself into a wood work site, which is the type of thing that swamps can have. So that's one piece of it. And then all these new resources, you'll also be able to trade them in the trade hub, just like you can with grain currently. And you'll also be able to do resource to resource swaps. So you could do something like take your stone and swap it for wood, or take your grain and swap it for iron. So that's all in land 1.75. And there's also a second phase to land 1.75, which you see down at the bottom, change production and harvesting methods. I'm not going to go into that on this call. I've got a reference there to the white paper, so you can read the Land 2.0 white paper. And the whole deal with that is we want to change the way production and harvesting works in line with what's in the Land 2.0 white paper. So those are kind of the two separate phases of Land 1.75. First, we want to release the new resources and the associated features for them. And then we want to make the change to how production and harvesting works. And then after all that, of course, there's still many other things that need to happen before Land 2.0. So there might be a Land 1.8 or a 1.85 or whatever. There's going to be an iterative process where we gradually release bits and pieces working up to the final full vision of Land 2.0. And you can see here, I've also broken down the status of things. So what I've started working on, what's already finished, what's not done yet. I'm not going to go into each one of these things. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of roughly where we're at so you can see what's involved. And I'll update this screenshot periodically and share it in Discord as we go along, just so you can see what the march of progress is like. You'll also notice that I have not listed any dates on here. That's because it's really hard to estimate how long this stuff is going to take. So I like to use an analogy with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I'm sure some of you have played that game. It's my favorite Zelda game. I absolutely love it. Tears of the Kingdom is a big open world game. In that game, you might set a goal for yourself. Like you might say, okay, today I'm going to travel to this big tower, and I'm going to unlock a new part of the map by doing so. All right, great. So you start walking towards this tower, and maybe along the way you run into 5 different NPCs which offer you some side quests. And one of them looks really interesting. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna take a break and do this side quest. So you start doing that, and while you're doing the side quest, you come across this cave, and you're like, wow, this is a cool cave. I'm gonna explore this cave. And inside the cave, you find some new item, and you think, oh wow, now I can go off and do this other area that I skipped previously. And so you end up doing all these things and getting sidetracked, and eventually, maybe several days later, you might come back to your original goal, which was to find that tower. So my point with this is that working on land is a lot like playing that game, that Zelda game. So each one of these tasks that I've listed on this graphic here is like a goal, like walking towards that tower in Zelda. And as I start working towards that goal, sometimes I notice other things that need to be done. Like I might be like, oh, I see this database function over here needs to be tweaked, but oh, it's not being used correctly by this screen, and that makes this redundant and inefficient. So I'll fix that and replace it with this other database query, and that makes the screen work better. But oh, when I do that, it's actually affecting 2 other screens over here, so I need to fix them as well. And it just goes on and on and on like that, chasing down these series of cascading consequences. So the goal here is to try not to get sidetracked too much, but to some extent it's unavoidable because a lot of this stuff is interconnected and interrelated and needs to be done anyway. So because of that, it's really hard to know what's going to happen along the journey to accomplishing all these various tasks that I've listed. And that makes it very difficult to come up with any sort of estimate about when these things are going to be finished. And we've disappointed people in the past by giving dates, so that's not something that I really want to do. I don't want to I don't want people to have certain expectations and then have those expectations turn out not to be realistic. So we'll have announcements and stuff, of course, as we're getting close. But for the time being, all I can really tell you is that my gut feeling says Land 1.75 will be Q1 of next year. And we'll see how that goes. And maybe sooner, and maybe towards the start of Q1, and maybe towards the end of Q1. I really don't know right now. We'll see how it goes. And of course, you're thinking, oh gosh, that means Land 2.0 is going to take ages. And yeah, it probably is. I'm not going to mince words with you. It's too early to even talk about what year Land 2.0 is going to be. We have to see how Land 1.75 goes first. But my feeling is that as I get deeper into this, and I really come to master the Land code base, then I might have a better idea of exactly how all the rest of it is going to work. And we'll start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel as we go along. Um, so that's pretty much all I wanted to say for now. I want to leave time for Yabatmat to say his bit, and then I know we have lots of various questions and community concerns and things that I'd like us to get to. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to Yabatmat now.
Yeah, thanks, Manser. I was just I was provided with a Google Doc of questions, so I was gonna go through those and I guess take questions from the community also, because everything I would say is probably is included in at least the pre-recorded questions anyway. So if you guys have any issue with that, Clay or Manser, just let me know. Otherwise, I guess I'll jump in. I don't know if I think these came from Bejangles. So if
Yeah,
someone wants to drop the link in there.
yeah. I know Bejangles got a got like a list of questions from the community together.
Yeah, so I don't know if you or someone can drop a link in the chat, then maybe other people can follow along, or
Yeah.
I'll just read the questions anyway. But
Okay.
oh, there we go. Yeah, so the first one is about what the primary goal is of the proposal. Is it simply to if it's simply to offload additional expenditures from the company? Are we open to considering alternatives to bringing in additional revenue? Um, yeah, I mean that is literally the goal of the proposal. Is to we need to reduce companies' expenses. And I've been doing that. We've been unfortunately letting a bunch of people go. We've reduced many people's salaries. We've cut any, you know, external expenses that we could over the course of the year. I mean, pretty much that's like the number one thing I've done over the year is just very significantly reduce expenses. We're at the point where any further reduction like really cuts into the stuff that I think are critical things for us to do. So rather than just say, "Hey, we're not doing some of these things anymore," I thought here was an opportunity for the DAO to help out, so we could reduce our expenses and still do the things that we think the community want to do. As far as like things to bring in additional revenue, I want to be careful about that because I feel like that's a lot of the problem that got us into this situation in the first place. Because it historically, we before I took over, we were extremely hesitant to reduce our expenses, and it was always about we don't want to cut any costs. How do we just bring in more revenue, bring in more revenue? Every discussion, our investors were always pushing us to show higher revenue. Everything was about higher revenue all the time. And that led us to do all these not well thought out short-term things to bring in a little bit of revenue that lasted for a month or two, and then we were always right back in the same situation. And we had all of these pre-sales and all of these promises that we couldn't deliver on, and it was a big mess. So in my opinion, we have a great revenue model, which is that we try to build a fun game that people like, and we sell cards and other in-game assets for that game. So my preference is to focus on that. Making the game better, getting more people in, and just selling the things that we already have available and plan to sell for revenue. And anytime we sit there and think, okay, well, how can we do something else to bring in more revenue in the short term? That always ends up being a very short term solution that kind of digs us into a bigger hole later. And that's the hole I've been trying to dig us out of. So, like some of the examples even were like in-game ads. I really do not believe that in-game ads will be able to bring in any meaningful amount of revenue for us. So that would be like kind of saying, okay, now we need this other project of going out and finding these, people to pay us for in-game ads, putting them in the game, and then if it doesn't provide meaningful revenue, then we've just wasted that time and that effort. Um, and there's things of like rerouting of auction funds. Well, okay, that's kind of a one-time thing. So that, again, that might help out in the short term. But then we're still right back in the same situation. So to me, I think we have a great model for the game. We work on, as I've been saying, trying to bring new people in who will spend money on the things that we already have, not these like new things. Um, but what we need to do is get our expenses down so we're not losing a ton of money every month, right? If we get to a point where we're like effectively around break even, then we don't have to constantly be like, let's stop other things and try to figure out something we can do short term to bring in revenues to get us through the next few months. Like I really want to get out of that mindset. That's been how the company's been for the last few years, is this like panic mode of like, how can we bring in more? How can we bring in more? We don't have enough. We're going to run out of money. So like I want to get us down to the point where we are not running out of money. We are not losing money anymore. We are break even at the current low rate of revenue that we have. I just want to get us to a solid state so we can just focus on the things we need to focus on for long-term success. So that's what the whole goal of this is. So my preference is not to just say, forget reducing expenses and try to find these new ways to bring in revenue. I'd like to reduce our expenses and then focus on things like the new sets and land and whatever. And as far as revenue, also, like I look at it, I would prefer, like I look at it as we want money coming into the ecosystem. Money coming into the ecosystem will help the company. In the past, also, we've had a lot of things where the company is taking all the money out of the ecosystem. All the revenue, all the things from pack sales are all going to the company, and the company was using that to basically pay for more than it could afford. And that means as we release new cards and new things, we're diluting the value of all the assets, and we're taking the money and spending it on too many resources, which just like takes value out of the ecosystem. So again, over the past year, since I've taken over, I've been trying to put everything possible into the assets and into the ecosystem, right? So with Rebellion, it was 50% of the sales went to the DAO. Everything that we've tried to do, I've tried to have burning or going to the DAO, and then to build all these things, we asked the DAO for funds. I think that's a better model, and it makes us also really much more careful about our expenses, which is what we need to be, so that we take as little as possible out of the ecosystem. Because overall, at the long term, like I think asset values doing well is what's going to propel this game to successes. Like we can't just keep pushing out new things and taking the money out of the ecosystem and have that be long term successful. So when I say like additional revenue, I look at opportunities to have where people want to put more money into the ecosystem in any way, shape, or form, whether they're buying alpha cards on the market, whether they're buying land from other players, whether they're buying SPS and staking it, whether they're buying packs. Like to me, it doesn't really matter. It's just, is outside money coming into the ecosystem or not? If it is, we're all going to be benefited together. It will help the company, it will help players, it will help everything. So I try to avoid things where it's just like the company is producing new stuff and diluting the assets and then taking all that money and spending it. So obviously this is a proposal to the community, so whatever the community wants is fine. But that's why I made this particular proposal and think this is the right way to go, is because I think we need to reduce our expenses. We need to get to a point where the companies at least break even, and we can stop like kind of the things we've been doing for the past few years of, oh no, we need to bring in more money. We need to like launch this, pre-sell that, do this. It's like, just stop all that. We should be okay, and we can focus. The second question, and I guess, so I'm sure you guys probably have all different questions about all the things I'm saying. So after I go through these questions, then we'll do like AMA questions. So just hold on to those. and we'll get to them. Maybe I'll also answer them as we go on. The second question was, how's the DAO going to replenish these funds, or is it just a gift to help the team? Yeah, I mean, this is not something that is directly replenishable. So the hope is that by allowing the company to get to a point where it's break even and can focus on longer term goals, and also getting things like land and other features developed, the game will be better and do better in the long run. So the DAO will ultimately benefit from that versus, if we don't go this route and the company isn't able to reduce expenses or other projects don't get done. So this is not something like it's like the promo card sale one was like the DAO paid the company money to develop it, and then the promo card sales, the DAO earns money from that, so it directly pays for the cost. This is not one of those. So this is more spending the DAO potentially spending money, which should hopefully just make the product better over the long term. And then 3 and 4 are kind of together. What's the runway for the company and what's the current monthly expenditures and current revenue? Runway is a difficult one because there's no like specific way to calculate it, and things change all the time. So it's been an issue in the past where Agroad or whoever would say like, this is the runway, but that takes into account a lot of assumptions that may or may not go out the window within the next month, and then things are completely different and everyone's like, well, you said the runway was X. Well, things change. But I think with question 4, with like giving an idea of the monthly revenue and expenditures and cash positions, will give everyone a picture of how things are, and then you can see what things could possibly change to affect that. So currently, so we just, if for those of you who probably don't know, we recently over the past week have taken a bunch of steps to reduce our expenses. So we've let a few people go, cut some people's salaries, and reduced expenses in other areas, including the plan to offload Cryptomancer to the DAO to help out there. My hope is that our expenses after the most recent cuts will be about $250,000 a month. That may seem high to people. It may not. I don't know, but we have a number of people on the team. We have server costs. That's like pretty much the lowest I've been able to get it to with keeping, the kind of projects we want to work on. Our revenue, which includes everything like the DAO proposals, that's revenue. That's like the main source of revenue for the company at this point is, instead of us selling stuff directly, the DAO sells things and hires our company to develop it, which again I think is a better model going forward. So our revenue's been like 100 to 150,000 a month. So even after the latest round of changes of reductions, and even if if the DAO helps out with Cryptomancer, the company will still be losing around $100,000 a month. But keep in mind that our revenues are lumpy, right? This is not like, monthly subscriptions or anything. So the majority of our revenue comes from major pack sales. So the idea is that if you average out over the course of a year, and if we do another pack sale, potentially early next year, the next major set after Rebellion, and it performs similarly to Rebellion, that should get us to a 12-month average of about $250,000 a month in revenue. So that's why I targeted that, because if you include everything over a 12-month period, and including a major pack sale, that would get the company to a break-even point, and that is what I'm trying to get to, like I said earlier, where we're not losing money. And the company has over $1 million of assets still available, so we can easily cover $100,000 a month shortfall until we get to the next major pack sale. That should get us back to break even and cover us for the ongoing year. So obviously a whole lot of things can change. A lot of our assets, a lot of the $1 million+ I mentioned that we have available are in crypto, mostly Bitcoin. That I agree is not ideal for a company, and that's the situation that I inherited last year. But I also I don't want to be stupid about it, and I really don't think this is the best time for us to go just sell all of that into cash. So I'm trying to do the best I can to manage that in a smart way. That really benefited us. When I took over last September, Bitcoin was at about 20,000, and people were saying, well, you shouldn't have your assets in crypto. You should sell all of that and have it in cash. And I understand that and agree, but I also at the time still didn't think that was a great time to be selling it, and that kind of obviously covered us for the entire last year as it pretty much tripled in price. So I you know want to do the same thing this year again. I still don't think it's the right time, to sell those assets. Obviously, we sell them on a monthly basis as needed to cover the shortfall. But that's one. Obviously, crypto could have a big crash. I don't know what's going to happen. That will affect our runway. If our current, 100 to 150,000 in revenue changes, that could affect our runway. There's all these different things. So I don't know the exact runway, but what I'm trying to do is get us into a position where I make sure we are good under, norm, not assuming there's no like big crazy things that happen. We will be fine through doing another major pack sale, or possibly a mini set. Still deciding and talking to the community over that. But we should be fine through that. And then from that point forward, we'll have our expenses reduced to the point where we're break even. We're not losing money every month, and we can focus on long-term goals. That's honestly I spend pretty much all of my waking and some sleeping time thinking about this. It's really the best strategy and plan that I've been able to put together. I know a lot of people think that I'm wrong or doing things or would prefer to do things a different way. I don't know that I'm right. I just am taking all the information that I have and trying to figure out the best way forward for the organization. So 5 is, can we get an outline for the outstanding items and rough delivery dates for Cryptomancer and his work on land? He provided Cryptomancer is very detailed, much more detailed than I am with this stuff. And we talk about delivery dates. I also agree with Cryptomancer. You guys might not know, but before I took over, when Agra was running the company, we had all these planning meetings, and we had project managers, and we spent tons of money and time planning and putting estimates and dates on everything. And they were all always wrong. I mean, if you guys remember the Lamb 1.5 release, we never, I don't think, hit any dates that we ever put down. And all of the time and money that was spent planning and estimating was completely wasted. It just is the fact of life with these type of complicated things. So to me, I've cut all of that. We have no project managers. We do not waste any time planning and estimating. I just try to make sure we have really good people who are very motivated working on this stuff. And I know that if there's any way that people like Cryptomancer can get land done sooner, it will be done sooner. I feel like you need all the project managers and planning and time estimates when you have people who don't really care working on it. Because if you don't tell them it needs to be done by a certain date, they're just gonna not work on it. That's not the case with Splinterlands. The people we have all are typically Splinterlands players and asset owners, and I know that whenever they get the stuff done is the earliest it could have possibly gotten done, because if it could have got done quicker, they would have done it quicker. So that's why we're not going to give dates. When we get close and we know it's about done and ready to be released, we'll let everybody know, and we'll plan a time for that. But again, I think that was one of the huge mistakes we made in the past, was all this planning and estimating that all just went out the window. And then the next question is the same thing for the new player experience. So yeah, I'll talk about the new player experience at a high level right now. But we don't have a lot of detailed exact things that we're doing yet for the new player experience, because that's part of the project, is figuring out exactly what we want to do. But at a high level, what we've been doing is we've been upgrading the entire website to use modern web development frameworks that will allow it to work on both desktop and mobile. So unfortunately, when I first built Splinterlands, I hadn't been doing a lot of web development for a long time before that. And I did not use any newer modern frameworks, so the website didn't work well on mobile. It wasn't even that easy to develop on or work on desktop. So unfortunately, we have to bite the bullet and like redo basically the entire website. We've been doing that. That's like what has been happening in the background over like literally the course of the last year and a half, I think. We are on the last piece of it. Just the actual battle page itself is being completed right now. Should be done, hopefully before the end of the year, and then the entire website will have been updated. So I know that's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. People don't see a lot of improvements. It's not bringing in new players. But it will allow us to be able to have a good mobile experience and wrap it into a mobile app in the future, which I think is going to be very necessary to onboard new players. So I apologize that it wasn't built like that in the first place. It took a long time and money. And I mean, we only really had like one developer working on it most of the time. But that's like kind of what we've been doing. More recently, since that's getting closer to wrapping up, Royal Eagle's been leading the project to go through our onboarding experience, literally piece by piece, talk to players. Like he's been like recruiting new players into guilds that he's set up. So he's going through and figuring out exactly what we can fix in the onboarding experience, like starting with the lowest hanging fruit, like literally going through every single new player that signs up. What are they doing? What are the problems they are running into, and starting to fix all those things. So that is the next step for the new player experience, is going through the onboarding process person by person and just starting to fix all the things that are broken or don't make sense or confuse them or cause them to drop off. And there's like a whole long laundry list of like very simple things that we're starting to fix. Like people sometimes come in and they go to the shop page and they don't know what to buy, so they buy a land power core or something, like a brand new player to the game. So these are like simple things, is just like direct them to the correct things they want to buy. There's been a lot of talk about different types of packs, so people don't just have to spend $4 on one rebellion pack, which doesn't really help them out that much. Like as a new player, maybe there'll be a starter pack option or cheaper packs option. We've talked about like offering in the store, when they go to the store, just showing a page of all the packs, so you can get rebellion packs, or it'll show right next to it you can buy Chaos Legion packs. And those will come off the market from other players. But like for a new player coming in, they don't have to know that. They just have to know, oh, it's 30 cents for a Chaos Legion pack, and I can use those cards in my battles. So it might be much better for them to buy, 10 Chaos Legion packs. And it can be just behind the scenes that is purchased off the market from other players. There's like a whole huge laundry list of things. We need to wait until the development of the tech modernization is finished, and then the plan is to have a developer start working on all of those things. Some of them were quick and easy and we're able to start doing in the meantime. But that's the plan for the new player onboarding experience, is get a mobile version up and running as quickly as possible, hopefully wrap that into an actual app in the App Store, and then just go through the onboarding experience one player at a time and make it a really good experience for people. The second phase of that, or the separate piece of that, is actually like marketing and promoting the product to get new people to come in here. I don't want to start spending any money on that until we actually have a good onboarding experience. If we do a whole big marketing campaign and all these people come in and half of them use mobile and it doesn't work, and then they come in and they don't know what to buy and they don't know what to do and they have a frustrating experience and leave, then we've wasted all the money on marketing. So I'm not just being like, oh, we're not doing any of this. We're going to do it, but we have to do it smart, in my opinion. So that's what the Hive DAO funds are earmarked for. So some people ask, like, why are you asking the SPS DAO to help hire Cryptomancer? You got all these funds from the Hive DAO. Well, those are specifically for the marketing and promotional efforts. So I plan to also use some of those funds to cover the costs for the developer who's going to be working on improving the onboarding experience, because that to me goes hand in hand with marketing and promotional efforts. So part of those funds are planned to be used to cover the costs for our developer who's going to be working on that. And then we've been talking to a number of people, both part of the community and externally, about getting someone to lead our marketing and promotional efforts and start to put a plan together that once our onboarding experience is improved, we can just go execute on. So I don't this is in progress. I don't have anything to report yet, but we have a number of people who are very promising, and I think can really make a huge splash for us as far as getting new eyeballs in here. And as soon as those things are finalized, we're gonna let everybody know. And I think you'll be happy and excited about it. But again, these things take time, so I want to make sure, if we're rushing and we're panicking and trying to get we need money and we need revenue in, we're just gonna shoot ourselves in the foot, and that's happened literally over the past few years. That's all we've been doing, is just not reducing our expenses enough, so we're always panicking. So that's where this proposal came from, is I want to get our expenses down to the point where we are break even and we're comfortable and we don't have to panic and we can take our time and do things properly. So question 7 in the doc is about when can we realistically expect to be able to craft items and spells on land? Cryptomancer kind of mentioned that. I don't know. Obviously, if things keep going on as they are, where we are only able to have one developer, Cryptomancer, working on land, it is going to take a long time. My actual expectations are that next year is going to be a big year for us. I think this year has felt a lot like 2020 to me. In 2020, I was very worried about whether the company could even keep going or whether we were going to have to shut down the game. It was a difficult year. For those of you who were around then, probably remember it. But things kind of can change quickly. And it happens to be 4 years later now. So to me, I think my goal is that we reduce our expenses, we get us to a place where we're comfortable, and we can focus on these long-term goals of improving the onboarding experience, getting a really good marketing and promotional person in here to make that happen. And then we will have a new major set and or mini set later this year or next year. And then things are going to be going well, in my opinion. So we could say, hey, things are really difficult right now and we don't have a lot of resources. Let's pare back land and do some kind of half-assed, simpler thing. But then we in a lot of ways we'd be stuck with that. It's sort of hard to have some simple, easy way to do items and spells, and then go and change it later and make it back to the system that is much cooler, in my opinion. So the other option is to just hold off and see if the company and the ecosystem get in a much better position, which is what I do very much expect is going to happen, although I don't know for sure. And then my hope is we will easily have the resources to bring on more developers to help Cryptomancer. And if we get really good people in here, in the past, unfortunately, we also had some people that, didn't do such a great job. And, we definitely had some issues with Farpatrod, which I won't go into. And you guys saw tons of delays and issues with land. But in the future, I feel like we know how to avoid that. And if we get good people in working on projects, they will start to go really fast. So what I would prefer to do is not try to pare back land to what we can do right now. I would prefer to try to get the company and the ecosystem to a much better position where we're able to actually deliver on the full vision of land in a reasonable time frame. Will that happen? I don't know. It's just my preference of how to proceed. And then look, if next year comes and things don't improve, then it might be time to take a look at and say, okay, well, this is the situation. It doesn't seem like it's getting better. How can we get something out that's much smaller in scope? And then 8, 9, and 10 and 11, the last 4 questions are really kind of on the same topic, which is that a lot of people are well, just forget about land for now and just focus on the new player experience. Have Cryptomancer stop working on land and help with the new player experience. That is a possibility, and if that's what the community would really like, then we can do that. I wouldn't necessarily be against it. I would prefer to also keep working on land. I think you need to have a good balance of getting out cool new things for our existing players and working on new player onboarding. And if you just focus on one and not the other, it's going to be bad. So my preference is to keep Cryptomancer working on land while we keep someone else working on the new player experience. And the question 9 is, will land 1.75 bring in new people? Probably not, but it's there's still a lot of value in getting new cool things for our existing player base. I mean, for example, um, when we haven't focused on putting out new things for the existing player base, like over most of the year, in fact, we didn't really do much. There was the halving promo in April, and until the recent promo card sales, there really wasn't anything new for people in the community to spend money on. And I think that the result was that all our assets dropped in value precipitously. So I think and that's not good for anybody, whether it's bringing in new players, existing players, the company. So I think it's important that we do both. I think we need to work on our onboarding experience and getting new people in, and at the same time, we need to work on constantly adding cool new stuff for you guys, that people in the game. And I've heard from some of the whales in the game, like saying like, "Hey, we want to buy more stuff. We want to put more money into this ecosystem, but there's just nothing for us." See, that's a bad situation. So that's why we did these promo card sales, and this stuff, and it's why I want more things in land. When we get these new resources out, then there'll be a lot more trading on the marketplace, which means more liquidity provider fees, which means more people locking up the EC. So the overall thing is, my personal preference is we need to focus on both things. We can't just focus everyone on new player experience, because then our existing players are not going to be putting money into the ecosystem, and asset prices are going to drop, and it's going to make everything else difficult. So we need to do both. And that's the idea of the DAO helping out with Cryptomancer to keep working on land, while we the other developers internally work on the new player experience. There's a question: what percentage of the current player base is involved in land? I don't have those numbers. We can look them up. My gut feel is that the majority of our really active players at this point are involved in land. I mean, the people that are around in this game now are kind of more of our hardcore, die-hard players. My guess is that a lot of them are involved in land, but we can look at the actual numbers and find out. But again, if the community is like, yeah, stop working on land for a while, my goal with the creating the DAO and everything is that I would like to be as much of a community-led game as possible. So I'm open to that. I don't personally, that's not what I would, vote for. And I think there's a lot of people also who wouldn't necessarily vote for it, but that's a possibility if someone wants to submit a proposal for it. And then, yeah, I agree. The last question is, the same thing about focusing the proposal on funding the new player experience instead. I agree we should work on putting out more information about what we're doing for as far as onboarding experience and marketing and promotion. So that's something I'm going to work on, especially hopefully as we get someone to bring onto the team to lead that in the very near future. We can announce that and kind of give more clarity around that. As far as whether that should be the proposal for the DAO, ultimately, to me, it doesn't really matter. I need to reduce the company's expenses, and I thought this was a good way to do it without reducing the amount of stuff that we're able to build. If the DAO would rather hire a developer to work on the new player experience, and then Cryptomancer is still paid by us. I mean, it's this half dozen, 6 to 1, half dozen to another, as the saying goes. So yeah, those are all the questions. I think that kind of covered most of the things I would talk about anyway. It gives me an opportunity to let everybody know what I'm thinking, why we're doing this, and hopefully that helps. I guess. Do you want to, if Clay or Cryptomancer, if you guys want to say anything about this before we go to community
Matt,
questions, let's do that.
Yeah, Matt, I wanted to touch on a couple of things, like a couple of thoughts that I had from what you were saying, and I guess touch on like a couple of the concerns that like I've been dealing with. I know that like the goal you currently have is to get the company to at least break even, and I think that that's obviously a smart strategy because we want the company to have longevity. Um, so one thing on my mind is like looking at the current, basically like treasury for the DAO. I do think that we can technically cover Cryptomancer. Like I think we could technically cover the like the current expenses that we have plus this. One of my concerns is that we essentially, if we're doing it like this, we essentially kind of like have a deadline for like how long the DAO can, I guess, cover or like help out with development cost. Like basically we have 10 months left with Jupiter, and we have, if this passes, then we have 12 months with Cryptomancer. You know, I guess like, what are your thoughts about like, what if we get to a year from now, like the DAO does not have the funds to keep paying Cryptomancer, and I mean, are we just kind of like banking on, like next year is going to be in a better position, um, get like a pack sell going, and basically, it sounds like I was doing some rough math. It sounds like basically we need about $3 million of revenue for the company to get to like a solid break even number. Um, so what are you thinking? Like basically we have like a year to get something like this in place to where the company's getting about 3 million in revenue. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, and just to be clear, if we include the rebellion sale, like the 50% that the company got plus all the other things that we brought in, we've been decently close. I think it's been like 2.5 million in revenue over the last like 12 months. So we're there. Like that's I mean pretty close to there, right? But the problem was our expenses were much higher earlier in the year. Um, so I've only just recently got them down to the level where they need to be. So that's why I think like assuming things continue at the level around that they are now, um, I want to make sure our expenses can like are good for that, right? So yeah, I think assuming no big amazing things happen next year, like we should be good. And so if we go on through the next year and we things go worse or not quite as good, the DAO runs out of funds to keep paying for these things, and the company is not in a position to cover them, then we're going to have to cut more, right? And then we have less people to do things. That's just always the case. So so the my preference is because again, I do think there's a high probability that things will improve next year. I'd like to use the funds that we have now while things are tight to make sure we get there in the best position that we can be. Like I want to go into next year or through the beginning of next year um, in the best position we can be. So rather than say, oh, we don't have anyone working on land, at least keep Cryptomancer working on it and using some of the DAO funds to do that so that if things do get better, we have a better land product available, right? And the same thing with new player experience and marketing and all that stuff. So yeah, to answer your question, obviously if we are 10 months from now and nothing's improved and things have gotten worse, then then we can't keep funding these things and we have to reduce even further. Um, and yeah, I mean, uh, I don't expect that we'll keep funding, especially like the Jupiter thing and other things going forward. If we don't have the funds for it, I mean, clearly we would just stop on that stuff. But yeah, my
Yeah.
my preference would be like this is the time to. I know a lot of people are worried about the DAO running out of funds and like what if there's an emergency. I mean, this is I wouldn't call this an emergency, but this is the time. Like this is in my opinion, the time when things are the toughest, and this is the time to use the capital we have available to make sure that when good times hopefully come, um, we we are well prepared to take advantage of them. And obviously, if we spend the capital now and things get even worse, then we're out of luck. But there's nothing I can do about that.
Okay. So I think like having a number to work towards, that makes it more realistic, and we can we can plan like next pack sell accordingly. which I guess brings me to my next question. I know you're thinking about running a proposal about whether or not to do the mini set, right? Um, I guess when do you think that the company will be looking for funding to develop the next like the next set, whether it's a mini set or a core set?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna propose to the DAO whether I want to get more feedback from the player base as to whether we do a mini set or just go right into the next major set. But regardless, there will be some set of cards, coming out in over the next 6 months or so. I plan to ask the DAO to pay the company to develop that soon, within the next couple months. But that would be in DEC tokens, just to be clear. So we are able to convert DEC to dollars to pay people.
Okay, yeah. Trying to catch up on chat, but yeah. So I mean, like, I think that you know getting a number to work towards is solid. So if we know that basically there's like a 3 million number, the next pack sell and I guess any promo should be built around that. I mean, like, I would say to the extent that like we need to make sure that like that revenue is generated, even even if like we do another set like with Rebellion where the DAO is taking 50%, maybe it's something like the DAO needs to go closer to like 25%. I think we just need to do some forecasting and figure out how to make sure that the company's got like at least a solid number to get as close to break even, or hopefully slightly better than break even as possible. Um, oh, okay. I was wondering. Yeah, it looks like Matt dropped out. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if maybe he can get back in. Um, oh, I was
Um,
like, I saw Vuctus's downvote, and I was trying to. Okay, so he's talking about if anybody wants to stop. Like, I was like, crap. I thought he was saying that he was like shutting down the proposal. I was like, man. Um, but yeah. So I mean, like the only other thing that like I kind of really wanted to touch on with Matt, and I guess one way or another, I'm not sure if he's hopping back in or not. But like something that's like on my mind, especially like if the DAO is going to be, essentially funding development, and one of the things that Matt was saying there is like eventually, like we want to get to this place where it's like really like a DAO lit game. I think something that's like very important in my mind, and I think that this is something that would provide like a level of security to the players as well. I think like especially with we're setting up the new SPS Foundation. I would like to see the DAO in some capacity get a license to the Splinterlands code, and I'm not saying like just like an open license to where we can take it and go run with it, and something like that. But I mean like some kind of like contingency plan that like if things don't like turn around, if the company is still struggling in like a year, like there's the option that the DAO can carry on and make sure that the game still lives on. So I'm not sure if if Matt's still around or if he's going to hop back in. But that's something that's on my mind. So I think we have a realistic number. I don't think 3 million is that crazy. Like I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. Like I've done some forecasting like myself to try to figure out. Oh, okay. Let's see. Let me get Matt back on stage because that's the other thing I wanted to touch on with him. Yeah. Okay. Hey, man. Yeah. So basically, what I was just saying is like I think we've got realistic numbers. I think even if right now like the DAO is having to help bridge the gap between over the next year, I think supporting development makes sense. I think getting to a point where we're forecasting the next pack sell to make sure that one way or another the company's trying to get like close to 3 million, even if that means like if the DAO is taking like a slightly lower cut or something than we did with Rebellion. However we have to figure it out, I think we'll do some forecasting. I can help work with that too if you want. But I think we've got realistic numbers, and I think having that should give people some sense of confidence One of the things that I was saying, and I think this ties into something you said there about like eventually getting to the place where this is like a very DAO-led game. I think especially if we're going to be having the DAO funding development, I think at some point we have to consider the DAO having a license to code, even if it's not necessarily like a full-on license, but more like a contingency, something like that. I think that that would help boost confidence. I think that that's something that people worry about. That's something like I was dealing with a lot for like the last 2 days. Is people see the proposal and they're starting messaging me and they're like, "Oh my God, it's like the sky falling, is everything on fire?" And I'm like, I think that like not getting this proposal would probably be a bigger indication of a problem. Like the fact that like you're willing to like say like, "Hey, look, we need some help. This is the current situation," and you're willing to come out here and talk about it. I think that like I'll tell you, like it makes me feel better because I think we have realistic goals here. Like that's something that's on my mind. So I don't know like how much like you can say in regards to that, or like what the current situation is. But I mean, do you see that as like something at some point, like maybe the DAO could get like a license to the code as like a contingency if something were to happen with the company?
Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, I've said this many times. I mean, my ultimate goal overall is to make Splinterlands to a point where the game can keep operating, even if our company wasn't around. Right? That's the ultimate test of decentralization. So anything that like furthers that, I'm in support of. So I would love to like work on the details of that. And obviously, if the DAO is hiring the developers to build uh, the code, then that is a no-brainer, right? So yeah, absolutely. And then as far as like, I know everyone in the community gets very worried with these things, and I totally understand that as a large asset holder myself. But to me, like I see extremely low probability of this like shutting down and going away, right? So it might be we don't have much resources and we don't have a lot of people working on it and can't build that much stuff. But my goal, the one thing I try to make sure, no matter what, is that this thing keeps operating. And even if it's a very like tiny little crew just operating it, things will get better at some point. Um, and then we'll just be in the position to pick up and start building again if it comes to that. So yeah, I'm very open to anything we can do to make sure that that happens no matter what. And that's also why in the past, before I took over, it was a very like different situation of like take all our resources and like spend them as fast as we can to try to build as much stuff as we can to try to build this into like a big business to sell, or like because we were very investor driven, who just their goal is not longevity of the game, it's selling the product and just making a return on their investment. So that's why my push has been like, let's get our expenses down and make sure we have longevity over anything else. Like that's the thing that's most important to me, is make sure like we have the ability to keep operating the game with any even very small amount of revenue or resources coming in. That's been my focus. So it's been more on cutting and reducing rather than spending and building.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. That's something I'm sure you're aware from the conversations we've had. But like, that's the one thing that's like always on my mind with how I approach the job that I do is like my ultimate goal is get the DAO to a place where it's self-sustaining, and to ensure that whether I'm here, whether the company's here, like I want the DAO to be able to sustain itself and keep the game running, like basically regardless of uh wow, they can't hear me again. Like I'm peeking out on my you guys can't hear me at all?
You're breaking up a lot.
Okay, maybe the internet's suffering a little bit. But yeah, moral of the story is, yeah, that's what's where my mind is at: sustainability and longevity for the project.
All right, well, now I can't hear you at all. Hopefully you guys can still
Uh,
hear me.
yeah, I
Uh,
think we're just cutting out a little bit.
yeah, maybe
Yeah,
just reconnect or something.
Yeah, I think Discord's just having a fit, but you know, I think we answered all the questions. So like, if you guys can hear me, like I'm not showing any kind of like dropped frames or anything on my end. So I don't know if you know if Discord is just having some issues. Like let me know if things are working on YouTube. But yeah, like it sounds like Matt's cutting out, and I think Cryptomancer was kind of cutting out there. So it could be that Discord is actually you know have okay. So you can hear me, Cryptomancer.
Yep, coming through loud and clear now. I think it just cleared up.
Yeah, it's entirely possible it was actually like Discord server having an issue because it's done that for us before. Like whenever we used to have these bigger streams. Can you hear me now, Matt? Yeah, Matt might still be out of it. But yeah, you know, if we let's see, can you hear me, Matt? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing anything from Matt, so he might still not be connected. But okay, so Cryptomancer, I guess, you know, I think we've touched on the meat and potatoes and kind of like gotten through most of people's like big concerns. Um, let's see, Dave has a question. I'm guessing this is probably more for Matt. Since essentially this proposal is to make sure the company gets the 14K and not really about Cryptomancer or land, would you be okay with amending the proposal to get the team the same money in an alternative way so the DAO has a chance to recover its funds? Um, yeah, let me see if I can get Matt back on stage again. Let's see.
All right, how's this now?
Okay, I can hear
Yep,
you.
you're much better now.
I think Discord just kind of crapped the bed there.
All right, yeah, I've been having problems all day, obviously, but that was just me. I'm glad everyone else had problems too. um, yeah, I saw Dave's question, and like, really, yeah, if the community would prefer to uh, do this a different way, that's fine. Like I said, my goal is just to get our expenses down to a point where we're roughly break even. Um, so be happy to do that a different way that works out the same as far as expense reduction.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like YouTube continued to work fine. It was just Discord having issues. So were there any other questions from the audience? Because I know like this is Matt's like Saturday. You know, like Cryptomancer and I tend to both I think just work crazy hours. But I'm sure you know if there's no more direct questions for Matt, yeah, I'm sure you got stuff you got to do today, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I do, but I'm obviously happy to take the time to talk to everybody about this. I feel like it's a lot easier for me also to address the community in this format than like writing posts. I feel like when I write a post, it takes me like hours and hours to try to like get out what I'm trying to say in the right way, and then everyone interprets it differently, and it I don't know, it is very stressful. Whereas this is a better format, so I appreciate this.
Yeah, I think I think whenever like you actually have like voice communication, like you can just pick up like on people's like intentions and their sincerity a lot more. Like I'll tell you, like I have an extremely dry sense of humor, and like whenever like I'm typing, I think a lot of the stuff that like I say gets misinterpreted sometimes, or people think like you know like I might be being mean when I'm really just joking. But yeah, like I'm fully on board with that. Like the text based communication is not always ideal.
There's a couple more things I'd like to say too. So there's been talk about like prioritization of different projects like NPE versus land. Which one should I focus on? Which one should this proposal be about, and whatnot? And I think rather than looking at the nuts and bolts of how the proposal is worded, it's important too just to look at the intent and take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Now, if the DAO starts taking over paying my salary, like I'm not necessarily like locked into working on only land for the entire year. Like priorities could change as things go along. Maybe in a few more months the company would want me to help out with something else, or someone else gets freed up and I can get some help on land, or there's lots of things that can happen over the course of a year. And also, we don't really have like a rigid focus where we only do one thing to the exclusion of anything else. Like, while I'm working primarily on land, there's also other things that I do on a day-to-day basis, which you'll see appearing in my timesheet, like doing code reviews for stuff that the other developers are doing, or maybe I might be reviewing some design work, or something urgent might come along, and I might set land aside and work on a bug fix for a couple days, and then go back to land. So there's not like a set rigidity to what I work on. Priorities are always fluid and changing as things go on. So I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, here really has any doubts about, Cryptomancer and guys, like, I'll tell you, like, while I don't know and, like, I haven't worked directly with all the Jupiter guys, like, I have, like, a decent working relationship with PJ. Like, I can tell you guys, like, I've worked with Cryptomancer on, like, multiple projects. You know, I think he's, maybe, like, a little bit more humble about his abilities than, I think, I think it's good to not, like, give people, like, unrealistic expectations and all of that. But, I think getting a Cryptomancer dedicated on the project, will probably see results. That's how I would look at it, because I know, even with, like, whenever you had to do brawls or, like, work on tournaments and stuff, like, you get the project done. And I think that's the big thing, right? It's, giving you time to familiarize yourself with all the code and getting to a point where you get up to speed. I think once you get up to speed, you'll just start, like, knocking stuff out. That tends to be how, like, I've always seen you work. Especially with stuff with, like, Hive Engine, or even, like, other Splinterlands projects. So, I mean, if anybody has any doubt about whether or not, Cryptomancer's the guy to do this, like, I mean, whenever I heard he was getting put on land, like, my first response was yes, 'cause, like, I wish he would have been the whole time. But yeah, but I
Yeah,
do have I have one question for you coming from the YouTube chat.
sure.
This is the most important question of the evening, so I mean, I hope you're prepared for this. Win Yabba
I don't know. That's more a question for Call Me Tim and Nate, because I haven't been directly involved in the card design and development. So I know they are very aware of the proposal for the ABBA card, and they're trying to make sure, I guess, it's appropriately awesome and figure out where to fit it in. But I don't have the answer to that. But if it's okay, I wanted to also talk about what you said about Cryptomancer being on land,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
because one thing that some people have said, which is reasonable, is that that some people think that his rate is very expensive or overly expensive, and can we do this stuff for less? And it is something I wanted to address. Is because obviously there are cheaper developers that we can get. But one thing that you have to keep in mind, is that the whole land project has kind of been a disaster. I mean, in my opinion, that's how I would put it. Of missing dates and slower than expected, and a lot of that's been also in some ways the quality of people or direction or focus. There's all sorts of different things, but like hiring someone who's really good is extremely difficult. I mean, there's a whole article recently about how all these companies inadvertently hired North Korean hackers, and one I think was there's like a whole ton of hacks that happened because of that. So just some things to consider. Like, so when someone's in here working on the Splinterlands code base, they need to be extremely trustworthy. They need to be they need to be a good developer. They need to be able to like figure this out, the existing code base, and they need to build it in a way that it doesn't just like technically work, but is also easy for other developers to come in and understand. So my hope is that Cryptomancer mentioned that a lot of the stuff he's doing is trying to figure out this code base. It is unfortunately kind of very messy. And my goal in the future is to get to a position where we can have more people working on land than just Cryptomancer. So you don't just code it so it works. You also try to ideally code things so they are organized and clean and well done, so other people can come in and easily jump in, and they don't have to take like 3 months to figure out what's going on before they can contribute. So yes, I'm sure we could find many cheaper developers out there. But can we trust them? Are they going to be inserting backdoors into the code or finding ways to exploit the system? Are they going to be doing things, really quickly and crappily so that like we have to redo them all, like the way I built most of the website has to be redone now. So that's you mentioned like you wish Cryptomancer had been on from the beginning. I do too, and that's why we put Cryptomancer on it, because I'm like, this project has been a disaster. We need to put the guy on it who I just know is gonna like take care of it and do it well. Cryptomancer mentioned all these projects that he's worked on in the past. Like, he's the type of guy you put him on a project, and it gets done, and it gets done well, and it works, and everything's good. It might take a while. He's thorough. He takes his time, but he also doesn't BS you, right? He's not like, oh yeah, no problem, it'll be done next month, and then it isn't, or it's done really bad. So we got to the point with land where I was like so frustrated with it. It was like, it's time to bring Cryptomancer in. You know what I mean? Um, so obviously he's only one person. He doesn't work miracles. But when I put Cryptomancer on a project, it means I don't worry about it anymore. I'm like, Cryptomancer's on it. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know the details. I don't know what's happening, but I know it's going to get done as quick as humanly possible to get done, and it's going to be done well and work right. So that's the situation. That's why I've gone this route.
Yeah, like I said, I have no doubts about like Cryptomancer. I think
I don't
most of
know what
the
I can really say to that, but thanks very much for the vote of confidence, Matt. And I will do my best not to let you guys down.
yeah, it looks like Dave had a follow up question. I think, yeah, like I said, I don't think anybody really had concerns about Cryptomancer. Well, at least not like 99% of us. There's of course like some people that just look at dollar signs and have that reaction. But like guys, I can tell you, like, believe it or not, like high quality blockchain devs are really not cheap. Like I know that
Yeah, but
that's like
that's what we're paying for. Like the
right.
stuff I just said. Like, it's what honestly, like, I would want to pay Cryptomancer more if we were ready. Like, if we had the funds available and everything was going great. If this was 2022 again, like, I would give Cryptomancer a bonus. Unfortunately, we're not in the position to do that yet.
Yeah. So I mean, like I know people like always look at the dollar signs and always think like I mean like I've had to deal with it too. Like I've been told like people could like replace me for like really cheaply. And, I'm just like, yeah, you could, but like this is like the bare minimum that I'm willing to do it for. And I mean I think that like especially whenever it comes to development, getting people that you can trust in your development and make sure that they're not going to especially in a crypto project like this, like one backdoor would would wreck everything. So I mean, like you got to have trustworthy people working on it. Ah, okay. Well, apparently we're having audio issues again. I guess.
Yeah, you broke up for a little, but I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. Like I went out and got like a new mic and got like this whole setup, but I don't know if it's just Discord having issues today. But I'm watching basically like my mic line to figure out like if I'm talking too loud, and I'm like basically redlining about half the time, so it should be very loud.
Yeah, I mean, you're not very loud, but it just breaks up sometimes. But it's good for right now.
Okay, cool. So let's see. Did did you follow? yeah, okay, so you followed up with Dave. I don't think there's any other questions. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to go over, or you guys want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm good to wrap it up. I am gonna take some time and go through town hall questions. So if anyone, like always, if anyone has questions, that they think of after this, put them in the town hall chat, and I'm gonna try to get to them as quickly as possible.
Okay,
Yep, I
yeah,
think we
and
pretty much covered everything. So if there's no further questions, then we can go ahead and stop here.
okay, cool. Well, yeah, I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. Hopefully, we've been able to address most of the concerns from the community. Anything you do, there's going to be somebody that's upset, but I think you guys have put like some of my personal concerns to rest, and I think like a lot of the concerns that I hear from the community, and the things that I get messaged about. I think that we've got realistic goals and expectations today. I think being like very you know frank about like what kind of revenue we need to see the company making to get to that break even point, or hopefully doing a little better. I think that that's something we really need to think about with the next pack sell to make sure that we're putting the company in a position to at least break even, if not slightly better. And even if that means the DAO doesn't take in quite as much deck, something like that, we can deal with some forecasting. But I think we have realistic numbers to work with, and I'm definitely optimistic for 2025.
But as far as the next pack sale and what you mentioned, like I would prefer to go with a similar thing to what we did, and if it is a situation where the company doesn't have enough, I think the company just submits a proposal like we've been doing. So I'd prefer to like start on the side of, everything or as much as possible goes to the DAO. And if the company needs some stuff from the DAO, we ask for it. I mean, so we could go a different direction if that's what the community wants, but that's how I've been looking at it. Like sort of give everything or as much as possible to the DAO, and then when the company needs some, we ask for it, and hopefully we have reasonable expectations, and that's sort of that gives the ultimate control to the DAO, right? Previously, or even if in the future, if we go where you know more funds are given to the company, then the community doesn't have as much control over what we do with them. So it's weird, like as the CEO of the company, I'm sort of playing both sides of this, but I look at everything from the community perspective and player perspective first, because that's why I built this whole thing in the first place. Was it's the product that I personally want to play. Like I would like the community to have the say. So the funds go to the community, and the community decides whether the company is doing a good job or doing the right things or managing its expenses properly, and whether it's worth it for the community to allocate those funds to the company. Just the way I think about that.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, appreciate you coming on. Hope everybody has a great rest of your weekend. And well, I'll probably be around, and I'm sure Cryptomancer will be too. But yeah, thanks for coming out, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I guess go vote how you feel.
Well, thanks for being here, everyone. It's been really nice talking to you all. Always a pleasure, and I hope you all have a really good weekend ahead.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
same. Talk to everyone soon.